Well, hello there, my lovely listeners. I'm Mr. Peter, and I've got a story for you. Get comfortable. Let us begin. The crystal vase exploded against the wall, shards of glass raining down like diamonds as Amara screamed at her sister across the lavish living room. Baby Sophia wailed in Amelia's arms, her tiny face scrunched and red, while Adrian stood frozen in the doorway, his engagement ring to Amara still gleaming on his finger. "Give her back!" Amara shrieked, her perfectly styled hair disheveled, mascara streaking down her cheeks. "She's mine! You can't keep her!" Amelia held Sophia tighter, her heart hammering against her ribs. "You gave her to me, Amara. You begged me to take her. You said you didn't want her. I never said that. I said I needed time. There's a difference." Amara lunged forward, but Adrian caught her arm. Confusion and alarm etched across his face. "What is happening?" he demanded. "Amara, whose baby is that?" The question hung in the air like a guillotine blade, ready to sever everything. Amelia watched her sister's face cycle through emotions, panic, calculation, rage, and finally a chilling coldness. "That baby," Amara said slowly, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper, "is mine." 1 year earlier, Amara had finally gotten exactly what she'd always wanted, a way out of their middle-class existence. At 28, she'd clawed her way up from being a receptionist at a small PR firm to managing key accounts, using every ounce of charm and ambition she possessed. When she'd met Adrian Blackwood at a charity fundraiser she'd crashed with a borrowed designer dress, she'd seen her golden ticket. Adrian came from old money, the kind that whispered rather than shouted. His family owned commercial properties across 3 states, lived in a mansion with actual servants, and summered in the Hamptons. He was handsome, kind, a little naive, and completely smitten with the beautiful, sophisticated woman who seemed to understand his world. Amara had transformed herself for him, maintained the appearance of someone who belonged in his circles, and it had worked. Adrian had proposed after 8 months of dating, presenting her with a ring that cost more than their childhood home. Growing up, Amara had always been the favorite. Their mother had doted on her, praising her beauty and charisma while treating Amelia as the dependable, ordinary one. When their parents had died in a car accident when the girls were teenagers, leaving them with barely enough insurance money to finish high school, that dynamic had only intensified. Amara had been the one who needed protecting, while Amelia had been expected to be strong. Amelia had put herself through nursing school with scholarships and night shifts, living in tiny apartments and eating ramen for dinner. She'd become a pediatric nurse, finding purpose in caring for sick children, building a modest but stable life. Meanwhile, Amara had bounced between jobs and relationships, always chasing something bigger, something that would lift her out of the ordinary existence she despised. The one-night stand with Ethan had happened on one of the worst nights of Amara's life. She'd been at a work conference in Chicago, sharing a cramped hotel room with a co-worker to save money. The conference had been exhausting, full of networking pressure and watching other people make connections she couldn't afford to cultivate. Her boss had criticized her presentation that afternoon, and she'd felt like an imposter in a world she was desperately trying to break into. She'd gone to a dive bar near the hotel alone, needing to escape, needing to be somewhere that didn't demand performance. The place had been dark and loud, filled with travelers and locals, the kind of anonymous spot where nobody knew or cared who you were. He'd been sitting at the bar nursing a whiskey, looking as tired and frustrated as she felt. Dark hair, strong jawline, eyes that suggested intelligence and maybe a little sadness. When she'd sat 2 stools away and ordered a vodka tonic, he'd glanced over and offered a tired smile. "Rough day?" he'd asked. "Rough year," she'd replied, and somehow that had started it. They'd talked for hours, both drinking more than they should. He'd been vague about his work, mentioned something about pharmaceuticals and recent family complications, but mostly they'd talked about feeling stuck, about the pressure to be someone you weren't quite sure you could be. He'd been easy to talk to, funny, real in a way that felt like a relief after months of performing for Adrian's family. She hadn't asked his last name, he hadn't asked hers. They'd been 2 strangers sharing honest moments in the anonymous dark of a bar, and when he suggested going back to his hotel room, she'd said yes without thinking about consequences. The next morning, she'd woken up in an unfamiliar bed with a pounding headache and immediate regret. He'd still been asleep, and she'd gathered her clothes quietly, scribbling a quick note that said thanks for last night with a fake phone number. She'd slipped out before he could wake up, before the spell of anonymity could break and they'd have to be real people with real names and complications. She'd flown home to Adrian, to her carefully constructed life, and tried to forget it had ever happened. It had been a mistake, a moment of weakness that belonged to that dark bar in Chicago and nowhere else. Until 6 weeks later, when the pregnancy test showed 2 pink lines. Amara had stared at it in the cramped bathroom of her apartment, the one she was planning to leave once she married Adrian and moved into his family's estate. Her hands had shaken so violently she'd knocked over the container of cotton swabs, sending them scattering across the tile floor. This couldn't be happening. Not now. Not when she was 4 months away from marrying into wealth and security. Adrian's mother, Patricia Blackwood, was already skeptical of her, questioning whether a girl from humble beginnings truly understood their world. Patricia had insisted on a long engagement, time to ensure compatibility, which Amara knew meant time to find reasons to disapprove. An out-of-wedlock pregnancy from a one-night stand would destroy everything. Adrian himself wouldn't care, he was kind and progressive, but Patricia controlled the family finances until Adrian turned 35. She could, and would, cut him off if she disapproved of his choice of bride. They'd lose the mansion, the trust fund, the lifestyle Amara had worked so hard to secure. And she didn't even know the father's last name. Couldn't find him, couldn't tell him, couldn't involve him even if she wanted to. All she remembered was his first name, Ethan, and that he'd mentioned working in pharmaceuticals. That was it. He was a ghost, a mistake made in a moment of weakness that was about to ruin her entire life. She'd sat on that bathroom floor for 2 hours before calling her sister. Amelia had arrived still in her scrubs from the hospital, her hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, dark circles under her eyes from a double shift. She'd found Amara curled against the bathtub, the positive test clutched in her hand. "I'm pregnant," Amara had whispered. "It's not Adrian's. We've been waiting until marriage," his mother insisted on it for propriety. "I had a stupid, reckless night with someone whose last name I don't even know, and now everything is going to fall apart." Amelia had knelt beside her on the cold tile, her face a mixture of concern and something else, something that looked like old, familiar resignation. "What do you want to do?" "I can't terminate it." Amara had looked up with red, swollen eyes. "I thought about it, scheduled an appointment and everything, but I couldn't go through with it. I don't know why, I just couldn't. But I can't keep it either. Not now. Adrian's family would annihilate me. Patricia already thinks I'm not good enough for her son. This would prove her right. She'd call off the wedding, and Adrian wouldn't fight her because he'd be too hurt by the betrayal. What are you asking me, Amara? Take the baby. Adopt it." Amara had grabbed her sister's hands desperately. "You've always wanted a child. You've talked about adoption before. This could be perfect. I'll help with expenses however I can. I'll send money when I'm married and have access to Adrian's accounts. Just until after the wedding, until Adrian and I are married and settled. Then maybe we can tell him the truth when he's committed to me, when his mother can't interfere anymore." Amelia had pulled back slightly, studying her sister's face in the harsh bathroom light. "You want me to pretend your baby is mine? To raise it while you marry someone else?" "Not pretend, really adopt it, be its real mother. You'd be amazing at it, Amelia. You're so good with kids, it's literally your job. I'm not ready for this. I don't know how to be a mother. I can barely take care of myself. But you do, and this way everyone gets what they need. The baby gets a mother who actually wants it. You get the child you've always dreamed of, and I get to marry Adrian without his family destroying me." The plea had been effective because it touched on everything Amelia had always felt. She was the responsible one, the one who fixed things, the one who sacrificed. And yes, she'd thought about adoption, had researched it, had imagined what it would be like to have a child of her own. But she'd hesitated because of the cost, the challenges of doing it alone, the fear that she wasn't enough. "Just until after the wedding?" Amelia had asked carefully. "Then we tell the truth? I promise. I just need time to secure things with Adrian. Once we're married, once I have some stability, we'll figure out the rest. Maybe you can stay as the primary guardian, and I'll be involved as the aunt. We'll work it out together. Please, Amelia, you're the only person I can trust with this. You've always been there for me. You're the only family I have left." That last sentence had sealed it, because it was true. Amelia had always been there from the day their parents died, and someone had to be the adult. She'd sacrificed her own needs countless times to support Amara's dreams and ambitions. She'd worked extra shifts to help Amara through rough patches. had listened to endless complaints and dramas, had been the steady foundation while Amara chased her ambitions. "Okay," she'd finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'll do it." The pregnancy had been miserable. Amara had suffered severe morning sickness that lasted well into the second trimester, complained constantly about weight gain and stretch marks, mourned her changing body like it was a death sentence. She'd had to hide it carefully, wearing loose clothing and avoiding Adrian's family gatherings, claiming she'd picked up a persistent flu. They'd told their small circle of friends and extended family that Amelia was pursuing a private adoption, and Amara was supporting her through the process. It wasn't entirely untrue. Amelia had filed the paperwork, met with social workers, prepared her small apartment for a home study. Everything was legitimate, just based on a lie. Amelia had gone to every doctor's appointment, had held Amara's hand through the fears and discomforts, had been there when the ultrasound showed a healthy baby girl. She'd watched the tiny heart beating on the screen and felt something profound shift inside her. This wasn't just about helping her sister anymore. This was about a child, a real human being who would need love and stability and someone who actually wanted her. The delivery had been long and painful. Amara had screamed and cursed everyone in the room, demanding more pain medication, threatening to walk out in the middle of contractions. Amelia had stayed by her side through all of it, coaching her breathing, wiping her forehead, being the support system Amara desperately needed. When baby Sophia finally emerged, red-faced and wailing, the nurse had placed her on Amara's chest for skin-to-skin contact. For a brief moment, maybe 30 seconds, Amara had looked down at her daughter with something like wonder. Her hand had come up to touch Sophia's tiny head, and tears had streamed down her face. Then reality had crashed back in. Sophia had been squirming, covered in vernix, making those newborn crying sounds that demanded immediate attention. Amara's face had shifted from wonder to discomfort to panic. "Take her," she'd said, her voice tight. "Please, just take her. I can't do this." Amelia had lifted Sophia into her arms, and the baby had immediately quieted, her tiny dark eyes blinking open to stare up at this new face. Sophia's fingers had wrapped around Amelia's thumb with surprising strength, and in that instant Amelia had fallen completely, irrevocably in love. "Hello, beautiful girl," she'd whispered, tears streaming down her own face. "I'm here. I've got you. I promise I've got you." The first 3 months had been a blur of sleepless nights, endless diaper changes, and learning to decipher what each different cry meant. Amelia had taken family leave from the hospital, spending every moment with Sophia, marveling at every tiny milestone. The first real smile, the first time Sophia tracked her face across the room, the way she'd calm instantly when Amelia picked her up. Amara had visited occasionally during those first weeks, usually with expensive baby gifts that Amelia couldn't afford to buy herself. She'd hold Sophia awkwardly for a few minutes, pose for photos to send to their aunt in Florida, then hand her back as soon as the baby showed any signs of fussiness. "You're so natural at this," Amara had said one afternoon, watching Amelia effortlessly soothe a crying Sophia. "I could never do what you're doing. Look at you. You don't even seem tired. You're glowing. This is what you were meant to do." Amelia had been tired, exhausted actually, surviving on maybe 3 hours of broken sleep per night. But she hadn't minded. Every moment with Sophia felt like a gift, even the hard ones. "When are you planning to tell Adrian?" Amelia had asked, rocking Sophia gently. "The wedding is in 2 months. "After," Amara had said quickly. "Definitely after. His mother is already on edge about the wedding. She's questioning every detail, every choice. If I add this to the mix now, she'll explode. But once we're married, once it's done and legal, she can't do anything about it. And then what? What happens with Sophia? We'll figure it out. Maybe we tell everyone she's mine and you were just helping me through a difficult time. Maybe we say I'm adopting her from you because you're struggling. We'll find a way to make it work. Trust me." But Amelia had already started to notice the cracks in Amara's promises. Her sister's visits were becoming less frequent, her interest in Sophia's development minimal. When Amelia tried to share milestones, Amara would barely look up from her phone. She was busy planning a wedding, busy being fitted for a dress that cost more than Amelia made in 3 months, busy becoming Mrs. Adrian Blackwood. Then, about 4 months after Sophia's birth, the lies had started. Amelia had first noticed something was wrong when she'd run into Patricia Blackwood at the grocery store. Adrian's mother had approached her in the produce section, her expression a mixture of concern and superiority. "Amelia, dear," Patricia had said, her voice dripping with false warmth. "How are you managing? Amara told me you've been having quite a difficult time with the baby." Difficult time, Amelia had repeated, confused. No, everything's fine. Sophia is healthy and happy. Patricia's perfectly shaped eyebrows had risen. That's not what your sister said. She mentioned you'd been calling her multiple times a day, crying, saying you didn't know if you could handle single motherhood. She's been quite worried about you. Cold realization had washed through Amelia's body. I haven't called her crying once. I barely speak to her except to send photos of Sophia. Well, that's strange. Patricia had tilted her head, studying Amelia like a specimen under glass. She's been very concerned about your mental state. She mentioned you had some postpartum depression issues. I didn't give birth to Sophia. I adopted her. So no postpartum depression. Patricia's expression had shifted slightly, a flicker of something that might have been suspicion. Of course. My mistake. Well, I'm glad to hear you're managing better than Amara suggested. She seemed quite convinced you were struggling. After that encounter, Amelia had started paying closer attention. She'd called their Aunt Linda in Florida, who'd immediately launched into concerned questions. Sweetie, are you okay? Amara said you've been having a really hard time. She said the adoption agency had concerns about you raising a baby alone, that they were considering taking Sophia back. That's not true, Amelia had said, her stomach dropping. None of that is true. The adoption is final and legal. There are no concerns. Then why would Amara say that? I don't know, Aunt Linda, but I'm going to find out. Amelia had confronted Amara the next day, showing up at her sister's apartment unannounced with Sophia strapped to her chest in a carrier. Why are you telling people I'm struggling? She demanded as soon as Amara opened the door. Why are you lying about me? Amara had stepped aside to let her in, her expression carefully neutral. I don't know what you're talking about. Patricia Blackwood thinks I'm having a mental breakdown. Aunt Linda thinks the adoption agency is taking Sophia away from me. Where are they getting this information, Amara? Maybe you are struggling and you just don't see it. Amara had shrugged, moving to her kitchen to pour herself coffee. Look at your life, Amelia. You're working part-time at the hospital because you can't afford full-time daycare. You're living in that tiny apartment with a baby. You look exhausted. Maybe people are concerned because there's reason to be concerned. I look exhausted because I'm caring for a 3-month-old. That's normal. What's not normal is my sister spreading lies about me to everyone we know. They're not lies if they're rooted in truth. Amara had taken a sip of her coffee, not meeting Amelia's eyes. You took on a huge responsibility. It's reasonable that people would worry about whether you can handle it long term. What are you doing? Amelia had felt tears burning behind her eyes. What is this really about? It's about making sure Sophia has the best possible life, and I'm not sure your situation provides that. The words had hit like a slap. You begged me to take her. You said you couldn't be her mother. Now you're trying to make me look incompetent so you can what? Take her back? Raise her as Adrian's stepdaughter once you're married? She is mine, Amelia, biologically, legally in the eyes of nature. And when I'm married to Adrian, I'll be able to provide her with everything you can't. A real home, stability, 2 parents, private schools, opportunities. Don't you want that for her? I want her to be loved by someone who actually wants her, not someone who sees her as another accessory for your perfect life. Amara had finally looked at her, and the coldness in her eyes had been chilling. Be careful, Amelia. You're raising my daughter on borrowed time. When I decide I want her back, I'll take her back. The adoption papers might say you're her mother, but we both know the truth. And if I have to prove you're unfit to keep her, I will. Amelia had left that apartment shaking, holding Sophia tight against her chest. Her baby, her daughter in every way that mattered, was being threatened. And she had no idea how to protect her. Over the following weeks, Amara's campaign of subtle destruction had continued. She'd told Adrian's younger sister, Caroline, that Amelia had been fired from her nursing job for negligence. A complete lie, but Caroline had repeated it at a family dinner before Amelia could correct it. She'd told the wedding planner that Amelia wouldn't be able to attend the wedding because she was dealing with some personal issues. She'd even called Amelia's supervisor at the hospital, expressing concern about her sister's ability to handle the stress of work and single motherhood. Each lie was carefully crafted, containing just enough plausibility to be believed. And each one chipped away at Amelia's reputation, building a case that she was unstable, unreliable, unfit. Marcus, Adrian's younger brother, had been the one to finally confirm what Amelia suspected. He'd stopped by her apartment one evening, looking uncomfortable and concerned. "I need to talk to you about Amara," he'd said, refusing her offer of tea, clearly wanting to get this over with. "Something's not right. She's been saying things about you, really concerning things, but they don't match what I see when I'm around you." "What kind of things?" "That you've been calling her at all hours, that you've threatened to hurt yourself, that the baby cries constantly because you don't know how to calm her. But every time I've seen you with Sophia, you seem completely in control and the baby seems happy and healthy." Amelia had felt her throat tighten. "None of that is true. I haven't called her at all hours. I've never threatened to hurt myself. Sophia is a normal baby who cries sometimes, but she's generally content." "That's what I thought." Marcus had run his hand through his hair. "Look, I don't know what's going on between you two, but my brother deserves to marry someone honest. And you deserve not to have your character assassinated. I think Amara is building up to something, and I wanted to warn you." "Building up to what?" "I don't know. But at the engagement party next week, she's been hinting that she has some important announcements to make. I get the feeling one of them involves you and Sophia." The engagement party, that was in 3 days. Amelia had felt panic rising in her chest, making it hard to breathe. If Amara was planning to make some public declaration, some accusation designed to paint Amelia as unfit, she needed to be prepared. But how could she defend herself against lies told by her own sister, lies that Adrian's family had been hearing for months? After Marcus left, Amelia had spent hours pacing her small apartment while Sophia slept peacefully in her crib, oblivious to the storm gathering around her. She'd considered not going to the party at all, but that would only fuel Amara's narrative that she was unstable and avoiding family. She'd thought about confronting Amara again, but their last conversation had made it clear her sister was beyond reason. Then she'd remembered something. During one of Amara's early prenatal appointments, when she'd still been treating the pregnancy as an annoying inconvenience, she'd mentioned the father's name in passing. Just his first name, Ethan, and that he'd said something about working in pharmaceuticals. At the time it hadn't seemed important, but now Amelia wondered if finding him might change everything. If Sophia's biological father knew about her, he might have rights. He might want to be involved, and if he did, it would complicate Amara's plan to simply reclaim her daughter whenever it suited her. But the problem was overwhelming. How many men named Ethan worked in pharmaceuticals? Hundreds, thousands. Without a last name, without even knowing which company, the search was impossible. Still, Amelia had tried. She'd spent 2 days calling pharmaceutical companies in the Chicago area, asking vague questions about executives named Ethan, getting nowhere. She'd searched LinkedIn profiles until her eyes burned, finding dozens of possibilities but no way to narrow them down. She'd even considered hiring a private investigator, but the cost was far beyond her limited budget. The night before the engagement party, Amelia had barely slept. She'd held Sophia for hours, breathing in that sweet baby smell, memorizing the weight of her in her arms. At 7 months old, Sophia was starting to sit up on her own, babbling consonant sounds, reaching for everything with curious hands. She'd learned to recognize Amelia's face, breaking into gummy smiles whenever her mother appeared. The bond between them was real, deeper than biology, built on every midnight feeding and whispered lullaby. "I won't let her take you," Amelia had whispered into Sophia's dark hair. "I don't know how, but I'll protect you, I promise." The engagement party was held at the Blackwood estate, a sprawling mansion with manicured gardens and a ballroom that could hold 200 people. Amelia had arrived with Sophia in a car seat carrier, wearing the nicest dress she owned, a simple navy blue sheath that was 3 years old but still presentable. She'd felt immediately out of place among the designer gowns and expensive jewelry, the catered appetizers and champagne towers. Caroline had spotted her first, rushing over with genuine warmth. "Amelia, you made it, and you brought little Sophia. Oh, she's gotten so big, can I hold her?" Amelia had carefully transferred Sophia to Caroline's arms, watching as Adrian's sister cooed over the baby. Caroline was sweet, uncomplicated, nothing like her calculating mother. She'd never believed Amara's lies, had always been kind to Amelia. "Your sister looks stressed," Caroline had commented, nodding toward where Amara stood near the windows, resplendent in a white cocktail dress that probably cost more than Amelia's monthly rent. "She's been snapping at everyone all evening. Even Adrian looks confused." Amelia had studied her sister across the room. Amara did look tense, her smile brittle, her movements jerky. Adrian stood beside her, looking handsome in a tailored suit, but his expression was troubled. He kept glancing at Amara with concern, as if trying to figure out what was wrong. Marcus had appeared at Amelia's elbow, She's been drinking, he murmured quietly. Started before guests even arrived. I don't think this is going to go well. He'd been right. Within 30 minutes, the evening had begun to unravel. It started when Patricia had called for everyone's attention, tapping a knife against her champagne glass. The crowd had quieted, turning toward where the family stood near the fireplace. Thank you all for coming to celebrate Adrian and Amara's upcoming union, Patricia had begun, her voice carrying across the room. We're so pleased to welcome Amara into our family. The words had been correct, but her tone had been cold, perfunctory. Amelia had noticed several guests exchanging glances, picking up on the tension. Before we continue, Amara had suddenly interrupted, stepping forward with a bright, brittle smile. There's something I need to share with everyone. An announcement I've been meaning to make. Adrian had touched her arm, concern evident on his face. Darling, maybe now isn't the best time. Now is the perfect time. Amara had pulled away from him, her voice rising slightly. Because everyone here needs to understand something about family, about sacrifice, about doing what's right. Amelia had felt her heart begin to pound. This was it. Whatever Amara had been planning, it was happening now. Most of you know my sister, Amelia. Amara had gestured toward where Amelia stood frozen near the doorway. You know she recently adopted a beautiful baby girl. Such a blessing for her, right? Such a wonderful thing. The room had gone very quiet. Even the catering staff had stopped moving, sensing drama. What you don't know, Amara had continued, her words slightly slurred, is that I'm the one who made that blessing possible. I'm the one who found that adoption opportunity for her. I'm the one who supported her through the process. Because that's what sisters do. We help each other. Amara, Amelia had said quietly, but her sister had talked over her. But now I'm concerned, very concerned. Amara's voice had cracked slightly. Because I don't think Amelia is capable of caring for that child properly. She's struggling financially, emotionally. She's barely holding it together, and someone needs to say something before that baby suffers. Gasps had rippled through the crowd. Adrian had stepped forward, his face pale. What are you talking about? Amelia seems perfectly fine to me. That's because you don't see what I see. You don't get the late-night calls, the crying, the admissions that she can't handle it. Amara had looked directly at Amelia, and the expression in her eyes had been pure calculation. I think it's time we considered alternative arrangements for Sophia. Maybe someone with more resources, more stability, should be raising her. Someone like... Stop. The word had come from Amelia, loud and clear, cutting through Amara's speech. She'd handed Sophia to Caroline and stepped forward into the center of the room. Just stop. Amelia, I know this is hard to hear, but Sophia is your biological daughter. Amelia had said it flatly, letting the words detonate in the silent room. You gave birth to her. You begged me to adopt her because you were pregnant from a one-night stand and didn't want to lose your engagement to Adrian. Every lie you've been telling about me for the past 7 months has been leading to this moment, where you'd make yourself look like the concerned sister and me look like an unfit mother so you could take her back now that you're safely about to be married. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the music had stopped playing. Amara's face had gone from flushed to deathly pale. That's not... You're lying... Adrian had turned to Amara, his voice barely above a whisper. Is this true? She's clearly having some kind of breakdown, Amara had tried, but her voice lacked conviction. She's not well. She's confused. I have the hospital records, Amelia had continued, her voice steady despite her shaking hands. I have the birth certificate with your name on it before the adoption papers were filed. I have text messages from you during the pregnancy complaining about morning sickness and doctor's appointments. I have everything, Amara, because unlike you, I believed we were going to tell the truth eventually. I kept the records because I thought we'd need them when we told Adrian together like you promised. Patricia had moved forward, her expression thunderous. Amara, answer the question. Is this baby your biological child? Amara had looked around the room, seeing nothing but shocked faces and judgment. Her carefully constructed facade had crumbled. It's complicated. You don't understand. Did you lie to my son? Patricia's voice had been ice. Did you lie to all of us? I was trying to protect everyone. Amara's voice had risen to a near shriek. I made a mistake, one stupid mistake, and it would have ruined everything. My career, my engagement, my entire future. I did what I had to do. I gave Amelia what she always wanted, a baby, and I protected Adrian from scandal. Everyone won. Except Sophia, Amelia had said quietly. Except your daughter, who you treated like an inconvenience to be managed instead of a human being to be loved. That's when Amara had grabbed the vase, when the screaming had really started, when the entire carefully planned evening had exploded into chaos. Now, in the aftermath, Adrian had stepped between the sisters, his face a mask of betrayal and confusion. "Everyone needs to calm down. We need to figure this out rationally." "There's nothing to figure out," Patricia had said coldly. "The engagement is over. I will not have my son marry someone who has shown herself to be this manipulative and dishonest. Mother, let's not make hasty decisions." Adrian had started, but his mother had cut him off with a look. "She lied about a child, Adrian. Her own child. She orchestrated an elaborate deception that hurt her sister and made fools of all of us. This isn't something you come back from." Amara had looked around wildly, realizing she was losing everything. "Adrian, please. I love you. I did this for us, for our future together. Tell them we can work through this." But Adrian had been staring at her like he'd never seen her before. "You've been lying to me for over a year. Everything about you, about us, was it all a lie?" "No, I love you. That part was real. How can I believe anything you say?" His voice had broken. "How can I trust you ever again?" The room had erupted into whispers and gasps. Guests pulled out their phones, some recording, others frantically texting. This was going to be the scandal of the season, the story that would circulate through their social circles for years. Amelia had seen it happening and felt a mixture of vindication and horror. This wasn't how she'd wanted this to unfold, not publicly, not with all these people watching. Caroline had appeared at her side, still holding Sophia, who had begun to cry from all the commotion. "Here, take her. You should probably leave before this gets worse." But before Amelia could move, the ballroom doors had opened and a man had walked in. Tall, dark-haired, wearing an expensive suit that somehow looked casual on him. He'd paused in the doorway, taking in the scene with sharp, intelligent eyes. "I apologize for the interruption," he'd said, his voice carrying across the room with natural authority. "I'm looking for someone. 2 people, actually. I was told I might find them here." Amara had looked up and the blood had drained from her face completely. "No," she'd whispered. "No, this can't be happening." The man had spotted her, and recognition had flickered across his face. "Amara, from Chicago? I've been looking for you for months." "You know this man?" Adrian had asked, his voice dangerous. Amelia had studied the stranger, her mind racing. Something about him seemed familiar, though she'd never met him. The dark eyes, the strong jawline, the way he carried himself. And then it had clicked. She'd been staring at those same features every day for 7 months, just in miniature form. "Ethan?" she'd said quietly. He'd turned to her, his expression shifting to surprise. "Yes. How did you—" His eyes had dropped to the baby in Caroline's arms, and he'd gone very still. "Is that your daughter?" Amelia had finished. "Sophia, she's 7 months old." The room had exploded again. Patricia had demanded explanations. Adrian had looked like he might be sick. Amara had sunk into a nearby chair, covering her face with her hands. Ethan had crossed the room in long strides, stopping in front of Caroline and the baby. Up close, the resemblance was unmistakable. Sophia had his eyes, his nose, the same dark hair. She'd stopped crying, staring up at this strange man with curious attention. "May I?" he'd asked Caroline softly. She'd transferred Sophia carefully into his arms. The baby had studied his face intently, then reached up to grab his tie with one chubby hand. Ethan had let out a breath that sounded almost like a sob. "She's perfect," he'd whispered. "She's absolutely perfect. Who are you?" Patricia had demanded, her voice sharp. "And what exactly is your connection to this situation?" Ethan had looked up, and Amelia had seen something shift in his expression. The softness that had appeared when he'd held Sophia had been replaced by something harder, more commanding. "My name is Ethan Castellanos. I'm the CEO of Castellanos Pharmaceuticals, recently inherited from my late father. And apparently I'm this child's biological father, though I was never informed of her existence." The name had meant nothing to Amelia, but she'd seen recognition flicker across several faces in the crowd. Marcus had pulled out his phone, quickly typing, and then his eyes had gone wide. "Castellanos Pharmaceuticals," he'd murmured. "They're one of the largest pharmaceutical companies in the country. Worth billions." Amara had made a sound like a wounded animal. She'd looked up at Ethan, at this man she'd dismissed as a meaningless one-night stand, and realized the magnitude of what she'd thrown away. "I tried to find you," Ethan had continued, his voice level but with an undercurrent of anger. "After our night in Chicago, I realized I'd actually connected with someone for the first time in years, but the number you gave me was fake, and I only had your first name. I hired investigators, but they found nothing." I assumed you'd simply wanted to forget it happened. I didn't know who you were, Amara had stammered. You never said you were. I didn't know. Would it have mattered? Ethan had asked coldly. If you'd known I had money, would you have told me about the pregnancy? Or would you have just tried to extract child support while still marrying someone else? Amara had flinched, and her silence had been answer enough. How did you find us? Amelia had asked. How did you know to come here? I've had investigators working for months, searching for any woman named Amara who might have connections to Chicago around the time of the conference. It was like looking for a ghost. Then, 3 days ago, my team found a social media post from someone at this party mentioning Adrian Blackwood's upcoming wedding to a woman named Amara. The photo was small, but I recognized her face. He'd looked at Amara with something like disappointment. I came here tonight to confirm, to maybe have a conversation like adults. I didn't expect to walk into this. You have no right to her, Amara had suddenly said, standing up on shaky legs. You're a stranger. You have no legal claim. Actually, a new voice interjected. A woman had stepped forward from the crowd, middle-aged with sharp eyes and an authoritative bearing. I'm Jennifer Walsh, family law attorney. I happen to be here tonight as a guest, and Mr. Castellanos absolutely has legal rights as the biological father, especially if paternity can be established. The adoption might be challenged given that the biological father was never notified or given opportunity to assert his parental rights. Amelia had felt her world tilt. What does that mean? I legally adopted Sophia. The paperwork is all filed. It means, Jennifer had said carefully, that adoptions can be contested if it's proven that a biological parent's rights were terminated without proper notification. If Mr. Castellanos can prove paternity and show he was actively searching for the mother, he might have grounds to challenge the adoption. No! Amelia had moved forward, her voice fierce. No, I've been Sophia's mother since the day she was born. I'm the one who feeds her, changes her, soothes her when she cries. I'm the one who loves her. You can't just take her away because of biology. Ethan had looked at her, really looked at her, and something in his expression had softened. I'm not trying to take her from you. I'm trying to understand what happened to my daughter. Why I was never told about her existence. Because Amara was ashamed, Amelia had said bluntly. She was engaged to a rich man, pregnant by someone else, and she saw the baby as a problem to solve rather than a person to love. She convinced me to adopt Sophia so she could marry Adrian without scandal, and then she spent months trying to make me look incompetent so she could take Sophia back once she was safely married, probably planning to pass her off as a stepdaughter she was generously adopting. That's not true, Amara had protested weakly, but no one was listening to her anymore. Patricia had stepped forward, her face stern. I need everyone who is not directly involved in this situation to leave. Now this is a private family matter. The guests had filed out reluctantly, phones still recording, whispers echoing through the ballroom. Within minutes, only the immediate family remained: Patricia, Adrian, Marcus, Caroline, Amelia with Sophia, Ethan and Amara, who looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor. Let me make sure I understand this correctly, Patricia had said, her voice dangerously calm. Amara, you became pregnant by Mr. Castellanos after a one-night stand. Rather than tell him or end your engagement to my son, you convinced your sister to adopt the baby and pretend it was hers. Then you systematically tried to destroy your sister's reputation so you could reclaim the child after securing your position in this family. Is that accurate? I was trying to protect everyone, Amara had whispered. You were protecting yourself, Adrian had said, his voice hollow. At everyone else's expense. My mother was right. The engagement is over. I can't marry someone I don't trust, someone I don't even know anymore. He'd pulled the engagement ring from his pocket, where he must have been keeping it for the speeches, and placed it on a nearby table. The sound of it hitting the wood had been like a gavel falling. Amara had stared at the ring, then at Adrian, then at the baby in Ethan's arms. Everything she'd schemed for, everything she'd sacrificed, was crumbling around her. You're really going to throw away what we have over this? She'd asked, tears streaming down her face. What do we have? Adrian had laughed bitterly. We have nothing. We never did. I was in love with a person who doesn't exist, just a character you were playing. Ethan had moved closer to Amelia, still holding Sophia. The baby had laid her head against his chest, one small hand fisted in his shirt, and Amelia had felt her heart crack at the sight. I want to be clear about something, Ethan had said, his voice gentle despite the chaos. I'm not here to destroy anyone's life. I'm here because I have a daughter I never knew existed, and I want to know her. But I can see that you, Amelia, have been the one caring for her. You're her mother in every way that matters." "Then what are you proposing?" Amelia had asked, her voice shaking. "Let's figure this out together. Not through courts and lawyers unless we have to. Let's put Sophia first and work out an arrangement that gives her everything she needs. A mother who loves her, a father who wants to know her, and stability." He'd paused. "I'd like to do a paternity test just to make everything official, but I don't doubt she's mine." "I can see it in her face." "And me?" Amara had asked desperately. "What about my rights? She's my daughter, too." Patricia had turned to her, and the look in her eyes had been colder than ice. "You gave up your rights when you handed her to someone else, and then tried to destroy that person's reputation. You used your own child as a pawn in your schemes. Frankly, I think Sophia is better off without you." "You can't say that. You don't get to decide." "No, but the courts will," Jennifer had interjected. "And based on what I've heard tonight, any judge would question your fitness as a parent. You abandoned your child for months, then attempted to reclaim her only after securing a wealthy marriage. That doesn't demonstrate genuine parental concern." Amara had looked around the room, seeing nothing but judgment and anger. Even Caroline, who was normally sweet to everyone, had been holding herself stiffly, clearly upset by the revelations. "I want to leave," Amara had said finally, her voice small. "I can't be here anymore." "That's the first sensible thing you've said all evening," Patricia had replied. "Marcus, please escort Amara out and make sure she takes all her belongings. I don't want her returning to this house." Marcus had moved forward, not unkindly but firmly, guiding Amara toward the door. She'd looked back once at Sophia, still nestled in Ethan's arms, and something like genuine grief had crossed her face. But then the doors had closed and she'd been gone. The room had felt emptier after Amara left, though the tension remained thick in the air. Patricia had dismissed Caroline and the attorney, leaving just the core group, herself, Adrian, Amelia, and Ethan, who still held Sophia carefully in his arms. "We need to discuss next steps," Patricia had said, her business-like tone returning. "This situation requires careful handling, both legally and personally. With all due respect, Mrs. Blackwood," Amelia had said, finding her voice, "this is about Sophia, not about managing a scandal for your family." Patricia had studied her for a long moment, and something like respect had flickered in her eyes. "You're right, I apologize. I've spent this entire evening watching my son's engagement implode and my family's name become tabloid fodder. But you've spent 7 months being a mother to a child who needed one while dealing with your sister's manipulation. I should have listened to Natalie when she told me something wasn't right with Amara's story." "Natalie?" Amelia had asked. "My daughter. She's been at college. But she called me 2 weeks ago saying she'd run into you at a coffee shop and that nothing about you matched what Amara had been saying." I dismissed her concerns as youthful naivety. "I was wrong?" Patricia had moved to a chair, suddenly looking tired. "I'm sorry for doubting you, Amelia. And I'm sorry my son's poor choice in fiancé created this entire mess." "Hey," Adrian had protested weakly, but there was no real fight in him. He'd sunk onto a sofa, his head in his hands. I should have seen it. There were signs, weren't there? The way she always deflected when I asked about her family, how she seemed to have a different story depending on who she was talking to. I just didn't want to see them. Ethan had shifted Sophia in his arms as she began to squirm. "She's getting fussy. Does she need something?" Amelia had checked her watch. "It's past her bedtime. She usually has a bottle around now and then goes down for the night." She'd hesitated, then reached into the diaper bag she'd brought. "I have a bottle prepared. Would you like to feed her?" Something vulnerable had crossed Ethan's face. "I'd like that very much." They'd moved to a quieter sitting room off the ballroom, and Amelia had shown Ethan how to hold the bottle at the right angle, how to support Sophia's head. He'd been a quick study, watching his daughter's face with wonder as she drank. "She has your eyes," Amelia had said softly. "I noticed it from the beginning, but I didn't have anyone to compare them to. Now I understand where they came from." "She has my mother's nose, too. My mother passed away 3 years ago from cancer. She wanted grandchildren so badly." His voice had caught. "I wish she could have met Sophia. I'm sorry. My father died 6 months ago, heart attack. Sudden. He left me the company, and the board's been pressuring me to settle down, produce an heir to secure the family legacy. I kept thinking about that woman I'd met in Chicago, wondering what might have happened if I'd gotten her real number, if we'd had a chance to explore the connection I felt that night." He'd looked up at Amelia. "I never imagined this." "Neither did I," Amelia had admitted. "When Amara asked me to adopt Sophia, I thought it would be temporary. Just until after her wedding. Until she felt secure enough to tell the truth. I didn't realize she was planning to manipulate the situation from the start. But you fell in love with her anyway, the moment I held her, before that even. When I saw her heartbeat on the ultrasound, I felt something shift inside me. Biology doesn't make you a parent. Love does. Showing up does. Being there at 3 a.m. when she's crying, and you're so tired you can barely stand, but you rock her anyway because that's what she needs." Ethan had smiled, looking down at Sophia, whose eyes were drooping as she finished the bottle. "Teach me. I want to learn how to be that for her. I know I missed the first 7 months, but I want to be there for everything that comes next. Even the messy parts, the sleepless nights and dirty diapers and teething tantrums. Especially those parts. That's real life, real parenting. That's what I want." Patricia and Adrian had joined them, Patricia carrying a cup of tea that she'd pressed into Amelia's hands. "You look exhausted, dear. Drink this." Amelia had accepted gratefully, realizing she was shaking from adrenaline and emotion. "Thank you. We need to discuss logistics," Patricia had said, ever practical. "Amelia, you're Sophia's legal guardian through adoption. Ethan, you're the biological father who was never notified. Amara is the biological mother who voluntarily gave up her rights. This is complicated." "It doesn't have to be," Ethan had said. "I'm not interested in fighting Amelia for custody. She's been Sophia's mother and that's not going to change, but I want to be involved. I want to co-parent, if Amelia is willing." "Co-parent," Amelia had repeated carefully. "Shared custody, joint decisions about her upbringing, both of us present in her life. I have resources that could help. Nannies if you need childcare support, so you can return to work full-time, a better living situation if your current apartment is too small. Not because I'm trying to take over, but because I want to contribute." "I don't want your money," Amelia had said quickly. "It's not about money, it's about giving our daughter the best possible life." "And yes, I said our daughter, because that's what she is. You raised her, you loved her, you're her mother. But I'm her father and I want to be part of her world." He'd paused, studying Amelia's face. "Unless you don't want that. If you'd prefer I stay at a distance, just provide financial support, I'll respect that decision. But I'm hoping you'll give me a chance." Amelia had looked at Sophia, now fully asleep in Ethan's arms, peaceful and content. She'd thought about all the nights she'd wondered if she was doing enough. If Sophia would be okay without a father figure, if one parent could really be sufficient. And here was this man, a stranger who was also somehow family, offering to share the burden and the joy. "I'd like to try," she'd said finally, co-parenting, carefully, slowly, making sure Sophia's needs come first. "But yes, I think she deserves to know her father." "Thank you," Ethan had said, and the relief in his voice had been palpable. Over the following weeks, they'd worked out the details. A paternity test had confirmed what everyone already knew. Ethan had consulted with lawyers, who determined that while he could challenge the adoption, doing so would likely harm Sophia more than help her. Instead, they'd worked out a custody agreement that gave Amelia primary custody, but Ethan substantial visitation and shared decision-to-making rights. True to his word, Ethan had helped Amelia move into a larger apartment in a better neighborhood, one with a spare room that he'd furnished as his space for when Sophia stayed with him. He'd hired a part-time nanny so Amelia could return to work at the hospital, pursuing the career she loved. But he'd also spent hours learning how to care for Sophia himself, insisting on doing feedings and diaper changes and bedtime routines. Amelia had watched him with their daughter, seeing the genuine love growing between them, and felt something unexpected blooming in her own heart. They'd started having coffee together while Sophia napped, sharing stories about their lives, learning about each other beyond their shared connection to the baby. He was intelligent, funny, surprisingly down-to-earth, despite his wealth. He'd grown up with money, but had lost both parents young, understood what it meant to feel alone in the world. "I was so focused on the company after my father died," he'd admitted one afternoon while they watched Sophia play with blocks on the floor. "I forgot how to be a person, how to have relationships that mattered. Then I met your sister in that bar, and for one night I felt like myself again. I've spent months trying to recapture that feeling, not realizing I was searching for the wrong person." Amelia had felt her cheeks flush. "What do you mean?" "I mean, the woman I connected with that night was vulnerable and lost and looking for escape. But the woman I've gotten to know these past weeks is strong and determined and puts everyone else's needs before her own. That's the kind of person I want in my life. Not because of Sophia, though she's the greatest gift I could have asked for, but because you're remarkable, Amelia. I'm just a nurse who's doing her best. You're so much more than that." He'd reached across the coffee table, taking her hand. "And I'd like to see where this goes if you're willing. Slowly, carefully, making sure we don't confuse parenting feelings with romantic ones. But I think there could be something real here." Amelia had squeezed his hand, feeling hope and possibility and the first stirrings of something that might be love. I'd like that too. As for Amara, she'd disappeared after the engagement party. The scandal had spread through social media like wildfire, the story of the scheming sister and the secret baby making headlines in gossip columns. She'd lost her job when her firm decided they couldn't have someone so publicly associated with deception representing their clients. Adrian had heard through mutual friends that she'd moved to another state, trying to start over where no one knew her story. 6 months after that explosive night, Amelia had received a letter. No return address, postmarked from Nevada. Inside was a single sheet of paper with Amara's handwriting. "I know I don't deserve forgiveness. I know what I did was unforgivable. But I want you to know that I see it now, what I threw away, what I destroyed with my selfishness. You were right about everything. I wasn't ready to be a mother. I didn't love Sophia the way she deserved to be loved. I saw her as a problem instead of a miracle. You gave her what I couldn't, and I hate that I tried to take that away from you. She's better off without me. Please tell her that when she's old enough to ask. Tell her that her birth mother loved her enough to let her go, even if that wasn't really my motivation at the time. I'm trying to become someone better, someone who might someday deserve a second chance at life, if not at being her mother. Take care of her. Take care of yourself. I'm sorry." Amelia had read the letter 3 times, then tucked it into a box with Sophia's other important documents. Someday, when her daughter was old enough, she'd share it. She'd tell Sophia the whole complicated truth about how she came into this world, about the sister who'd made terrible choices but had ultimately given Amelia the greatest gift of her life. On Sophia's first birthday, they'd gathered at Ethan's house for a small celebration. Just Amelia, Ethan, their growing family of friends, and the extended Blackwood clan who'd embraced them both after the scandal settled. Patricia had brought an enormous stuffed bear. Marcus and Caroline had collaborated on a photo album documenting Sophia's first year. Even Adrian had stopped by briefly, now dating someone new and seemingly at peace with how things had ended with Amara. As they'd sang Happy Birthday and watched Sophia smash her face into a small cake, her chubby hands covered in frosting, and her delighted squeals filling the room, Amelia had felt Ethan's arm slip around her waist. "Happy?" he'd murmured. "So happy it scares me sometimes," she'd admitted, "like it might all disappear. It won't. We're building something real here, something solid. You, me, and our beautiful girl." "Our girl," Amelia had repeated, liking the sound of it. Sophia had chosen that moment to reach for them both, leaving frosting handprints on their clothes, and they'd laughed together, a family born from betrayal but built on love. The road had been dark and twisted, full of lies and manipulation and pain, but standing there with her daughter and the man she was falling in love with, Amelia understood that sometimes the worst betrayals led to the most beautiful beginnings. Her sister had tried to use her, had tried to destroy her reputation, had treated her own child as a pawn in a game of social climbing, but in the end, Amara had lost everything while Amelia had gained the family she'd always dreamed of having. If you've made it to the end of this story, thank you for staying with us through every twist and revelation. This tale of betrayal, redemption, and the true meaning of family shows us that biology doesn't make a parent, love does. What would you have done in Amelia's situation? Would you have agreed to help your sister from the beginning, or would you have refused? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and if this story touched your heart or kept you on the edge of your seat, please hit that like button and subscribe for more dramatic stories that explore the complexities of human relationships. Your support helps us bring you more content like this, and your comments and discussions make our community stronger. Thank you for watching, and remember that sometimes the greatest gifts come wrapped in the most unexpected and painful packages. See you in the next story.